What is up, guys? Welcome back to CageChat MMA and welcome to a brand new series. This is called What's the Chat, and this is where we're going to be looking at some of the biggest stories that's been happening in the week so far across MMA, not just on the UFC or in the UFC, but of course, we've had a busy build up to the week. Obviously, it almost branched over from last week where we had obviously Kevin Holland replaced Darren Till against Jack Hermansson on UFC Fight Night 185, I believe, on December 5th at least. We also had the pullout of Islam Makhachev versus Rafael. So we're talking about poor Felder and how gangster he is, stepping in on 5 days' notice against the former lightweight champion in Rafael. And of course, Kayla Harrison moving to Invicta for one fight during the off-season of PFL. But there's only one way to start the first episode, and it's, of course, McGregor versus Dustin Poirier, or rightfully known as Dustin Poirier versus McGregor 2. The rematch seemingly is on. We've had a lot of chat from all parties involved in this one, saying that a couple saying it's on. Dustin Poirier said it's on. John Kavanagh, coach of Conor McGregor, of course, said it's on. Conor McGregor put out a very heartfelt message on his Instagram post last night, I believe it was anyway, saying that, you know, how privileged he was and how the first fight between the two changed his life really. Obviously, that was his biggest test up to that point, you could say, before he went on to face the Chad Mendez's and obviously the Jose Aldo's and then Eddie Alvarez. So Dustin Poirier was almost a point in Conor McGregor's career where you say that was a big win, as it was Max Holloway. Now you look down the line further down with hindsight, with Max Holloway becoming the featherweight champion and maybe the consensus greatest featherweight of all time in the UFC. But Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier 2 seems on for UFC 257 in January 23rd, of course. It will mark 1 year and a couple of weeks since Conor McGregor last entered the cage against Donald Cowboy Cerrone. Obviously, that bout only lasted 40 seconds and he was been itching to fight all year, calling out likes of Anderson Silva, Anthony Pettis, Jorge Masvidal's been getting it. Everyone left, right and centre. If they thought that week or have been in the news that week, Conor McGregor has almost called him out for a battle and a scrap, but it seems Dustin Poirier is the place and the name that he's gone to. Obviously, Dustin Poirier is coming off that impressive win against Dan Hooker, that 5-round battle where the hangman went hell for leather, held in there, of course, for that whole 25 minutes. Previously, he'd beat, obviously, very closely Paul Felder, who we'll be talking about very soon. But the lightweight division at the moment, now with Khabib Nurmagomedov quote-unquote retired, obviously he's still the champion, and there's been, again, murmurs going around that he's coming back for 30-0. So it's unlikely that the McGregor-Dustin Poirier fight is for the lightweight championship, whether it's for an interim belt, maybe, just add a little bit of spice for it. But we'll have a look at what Conor McGregor said in that post last night. He said, "I'm very grateful to be able to return and get to do what I love again. I look forward to the fresh test Dustin will bring us since our first bout, while also showcase my own incredibly deep cache of weaponry. Whatever tool is needed on the night will be pulled from the duffel. I'm also really excited about aiding Dustin's charity, the Good Fight Foundation, which through the donation, will build a gym premise for disadvantaged youth in his childhood hometown." So you can see there a very poignant message there from McGregor, and obviously we know the Good Fight Foundation and the good work that Dustin Poirier does and how impressive that is. And to see them two come together, obviously the first fight was quite heated, especially, the mental games that McGregor was putting off. It got under the skin of Dustin Poirier at the time, but both of them are very much matured. You see Dustin Poirier's maturity as he's gone through his UFC career from that fight. Obviously now he's a well-respected, well-liked member of the MMA community and a fighter as a whole, an athlete who he definitely deserved that interim lightweight championship, but he deserves maybe to go that one step further and become an undisputed champion. Unfortunately for him, Khabib Nurmagomedov is and was the champion on that night. So yes, it is interesting, this fight. I think, obviously, I think a lot of people want to see Gaethje McGregor, maybe, but I think this fight does, again, it's another pinpoint in both of their careers, especially McGregor. Obviously, we haven't seen a lot of him. We've seen 40 seconds of him in what, 2 and a bit years now, maybe since, if and when he steps in on January 23rd. So we've not seen a lot of them, but it feels like he wants to come back to fight for good. Obviously, we know how much money he's made and how much money he's got aside in certain projects, obviously Prop 12 being the elite of that, but August McGregor, of course. So it looks like he's not fighting for money. It looks like he's fighting for the passion. And when we see that McGregor, it could be dangerous. Obviously, the one against Khabib Nurmagomedov, the less that's said about that McGregor, the better. he was in clearly a dark place. Whether that fame from the Mayweather fight, the 100 mil that he was supposed to be going, got too much for him, because we do forget, we don't condone anything that McGregor's done, but he had such a catapult in fame and finances and riches in every sense of the word that it must be difficult for him. It must have been difficult for him to get his head around that, especially when you come from being on the dole in 2013, 2012. That last paycheck that he got, the story of him going down the post office, collecting dominating and fighting in Stockholm the week later or 2 weeks later. So he has got a very good story, and I think it's interesting to see where he is in this lightweight division, where he stacks up in that top 5 and in this lightweight picture. We know he's at the top of it, but just how good he is, and how has Dustin Poirier grown since that first fight between the two of them. Obviously, there's a 10-pound added difference to him. Obviously, there was talk maybe about this being at welterweight, but that wouldn't have made sense with the winner of this more likely getting a title opportunity. And I do think, obviously, we'll look at what Dana said there, but could you imagine the winner of this? Obviously, both of these both had losses to Khabib and Magomedov. But if Khabib wants to come back to 30-0 and it's not GSP, the Ultimate Fighter returns in 2021. And there was murmurs before the original fight, before the second Fight Island trip. Dana White came out and said, we'd given McGregor and Khabib the opportunity to do the Ultimate Fighter as a pair, to come back, build up the rematch, and both of those alone, and be coaches of that. A good incentive for McGregor and Dustin Poirier too, if it isn't for a title bout, is the winner becomes the coach, and Khabib Nurmagomedov is the coach, and he returns to 2021 for the Ultimate Fighter. That gives him enough time to train, to come back, and obviously with March, if it's filming, you're probably looking at I don't know how long off the top of my head the Ultimate Fighter goes on for, but you're expecting him to be ready by April, May, if not September at least. That would fit in nicely with a timeline for Khabib Nurmagomedov. So if they want to do it, and I think they are going to do Dustin Poirier and McGregor too, especially with it being the first pay-per-view of the new year, an incentive for me would to have the winner gets a nice little managerial position on the Ultimate Fighter when it comes back in 2021 with middleweights and bantamweights, of course. So we'll have a look at what Dana White said. Obviously, he spoke to ESPN and Brett Okamoto just yesterday, I believe, saying Jan 23rd on Fight Island. So that, I think, was the little nugget there we got from Dana White there. It isn't fully completed, 2 fights. Obviously, both of them had their contracts by the looks of it given to them. Dustin signed it, and I think McGregor's probably just about signed it within the last 24 hours, but it's not confirmed yet. So there is a lot of this, and obviously, with the allowance of fans or not, it seems like at least Fight Island and the UAE and Abu Dhabi and that area of the globe is going to be allowing fans back pretty soon. The UAE Warriors, a smaller promotion, did have a promotion out on their social media saying if you've got the vaccine, you can come to the event this year in UAE. So obviously there could be the possibility of fans in January for 2021 for a McGregor fight. How good would that be? Now obviously travel restrictions probably limits how much of a following you can get. We know the Irish follow him from every corner of the globe to support him, so that would be interesting how to get around that. I guess if you're a diehard McGregor fan, you're willing to take that 2 weeks to quarantine if you're going to go see McGregor versus Dustin Poirier too. So yes, I think that's a cracking fight. I think it's the fight that's going to happen. Amanda Ribas and Michelle Waterson's going to be on that card. So it seems. So it's going to be an incredible bout and a great way to start 2021. Just hopefully McGregor's season kicks on, because obviously 2020 was the year he came back and went to fight 3 times, and it hasn't happened. So hopefully 2021 we can try and restart that. McGregor gets a good win, perhaps, although it's not going to be easy for him against a very well trained and experienced Dustin Poirier at this time. It's not the same level of experience and maturity as I mentioned earlier than the first fight. So I do think it's going to be a different result in terms of it won't be a first round KO, TKO for McGregor. I think it does go a little bit longer. Now we move on to Paul Felder, someone who also fought earlier in 2020 before it all kicked off with COVID, down in Auckland against Dan Hangman Hooker, of course, and that fight went to 5 rounds, and he lost it on a takedown in my eyes. I think I did give that 5th round to Dan Hooker for getting that takedown, but again, these two went to war, the Irish Dragon, the Hangman in Auckland, New Zealand. Obviously, no conspiracy theory, but we've got to say that it was in Dan Hooker's backyard, so maybe the judges on the day were a little bit more lenient towards him. And obviously, Paul Felder lost that, and we see him announce his retirement, or so it seemed in the octagon that day. He wanted that chance to go through a title challenge, and Dan Hooker didn't say that, but obviously after a fight, it's very emotional feelings, and he says he's 50-50 done whether he wins or loses on Saturday night at UFC Vegas 14. But it is good to see him back. He's still someone who's very much the elite of that division in the lightweight 135-pound division, of course. I think he's 6th or 7th in the rankings, at least, just behind Dan Hooker, Justin Gaethje, Tony Ferguson, Conor McGregor. And obviously, he's stepping in on 5 days' notice. And you always say that when you step on notice, it can be, I was saying in a group chat the other night, take the BMF title off Jorge and give it to Paul Felder because he's the real BMF. Stepping on a 5 days' notice, fighting on what punctured or collapsed lungs in previous fights. The guy just doesn't know when to stop, and that's an all due credit and compliment to him because he saved the event. Obviously, Islam Makhachev was supposed to be making his first main event, his first 5-round fight, but unfortunately had to pull out, and there was a big scramble about who would replace him and whether Rafael dos Anjos would be fighting this weekend at 155 or 170 even. But Paul Felder, he was speaking obviously to Ariel Helwani. I thought about it and I decided with everything going on in the world and all the sad things going on in people's lives and losing their jobs and suffering, and we just lost Alex freaking Trebek to pancreatic cancer. I was like, man, you're still 36, you're young, you're in shape, save the date, let's go get paid, let's have fun. You're fighting a legend. What do I have to lose? So I think that shows the character and the mindset of Paul Felder and where he's at the moment. He's, he is 36 years of age. He's not getting any younger, but he's still in a position where he can fight and put on great performances. Now, I know why he announced his retirement originally, because of the family side of things, missing his family, going off to fight camps, missing them 6, 7, 8 weeks. So I can see why. And once you start building a family, that becomes a lot more important than, we say fighters are very selfish people because they have to, within a limited amount of time, make as much money and as progress as they can. So it can be difficult to make other commitments outside of fighting. But it's going to be interesting. If Paul Felder wins this weekend, I don't know what's going to happen. I think it's more chance of him retiring, but then he beat Rafael dos Anjos, a former champion. Will it give him that buzz to continue? And if he loses, maybe there's even more chance he continues because he's going to want to maybe, yearn for that win and go out on a high, which many fighters don't do. And obviously, Rafael dos Anjos looking to rebuild himself back in that lightweight division. If he beats Paul Felder, he instantly climbs up to 6th or 7th, where he wouldn't have done having fought Islam Makhachev, who's 9, 10, 11, still very much just hanging around that top 10, albeit he's one of the prospects that looks to be going straight to the top of that division. So yeah, I think it's made the event more exciting as a whole, to be honest. And it was obviously the biggest story this week because with the event being so close, as we mentioned, there was a big scramble with the UFC to get the event saved. And it's funny that he was supposed to be doing the commentary on Saturday night as well, but Michael Bisping's been rebooked for that. And obviously we saw the Contender Series last night where 3 more fighters aspiring to get in the UFC got contracts last night out of the 5 that won. So that's been phenomenal. The Contender Series is a phenomenal series. But someone else who's been on the move is Kayla Harrison now. Obviously, she is the poster girl, the staple pin for PFL, Professional Fighters League, who had to suspend their season this year because of COVID-19. But they're finally allowing fighters to broaden their horizons and go out and fight for one more fight throughout the rest of this year and get some activity in there. Because obviously, like Lance Palmer, Brendan Loughnane, Emiliano Sordi, of course, have all missed chances to improve their careers. Most of them obviously expecting to fight at New Year's Eve. Rory McDonald would have to include in that as well. So it's a big move for them, whether it's because Kayla Harrison is the poster girl, the star that they almost have to keep happy with it, not within in an attitude sense, but you don't want to piss off your biggest money earner in Kayla Harrison. And she's a 2-time Olympian. She could be very wanted by other organizations, and she's making her featherweight debut on Invicta FC 43 in just over a week now, on the 20th of November, against Courtney King, which is going to be a huge bout for her. Obviously, it's a featherweight debut. It's going to be interesting to see how that weight cut goes, but I think she's going to get it done with no pressure. She's been there before, obviously fighting for the Olympics or at the Olympics in judo, because she's going to be wary about keeping her weight low and making sure she hits that target in time for competition. It's just going to be how does she perform with those fewer 10 pounds that she's going to have, and what does it mean for her future? A good performance with Invicta, a very dominant win at 145, then opens up the question for fights against Cyborg, Julia Budd in the Bellator, and obviously over in the UFC when you got Megan Anderson, Felicia Spencer, and Amanda Nunes, who's a champion of that, who just had to pull out their fight at UFC 256. But could you imagine Felicia Spencer versus Kayla Harrison? What a scrap that would be. Two fantastic grapplers, obviously from different disciplines. Felicia Spencer's more jiu-jitsu, whereas Kayla Harrison's more grappling and, having a very strong judoka background. She's not, she's more likely to take you down and ground and pound you rather than take your neck out and choke you out. But this is what Kayla Harrison had to say, of course. I've been on a mission to show I am the best fighter. I've been tackling challenges my entire career, and this bout at 145 pounds is a new and exciting one for me. I'm looking forward to competing in this new weight class and can't wait to get back into the PFL cage come April. So yes, PFL returns in April, and it'll be at their opening season bouts in April, May, June, of course, with the end goal coming at New Year's Eve on 2021 now in Madison Square Garden in New York, and obviously Brendan Loughnane hopefully be on there. But it depends on what. I know Kayla Harrison has I think it's a 3-season deal. It's at least a multi-season deal with PFL, so it's going to be interesting to see a good performance at 135 where that puts her future. Whether PFL, make a 145 pound season for her next season and next year, or she gets her season done next year and then she looks to the pastures new in a new organization. And it does make it easier. The fact that she's going to be fighting on UFC Fight Pass for Invicta. The fact she thought or is fighting on ESPN Plus, which is the same broadcast that the UFC's on. I think her transition into UFC is going to be starting come November 20th. Now, someone else fighting this year in December is Leon Edwards versus Hamza Chimaev. Of course, Leon Edwards has yet to fight this year after beating Rafael Anjos last year, of course, in 2019, in August, I believe it was, at least August, July. So he's had a long time out. He was supposed to fight Tyron Woodley in London back in March. That didn't happen because of COVID restrictions, of course. So he's been waiting to get back in the cage. And I like the story of 2020 that Ariel Helwani pictured and painted, saying that this is where it starts and this is where it ends with Hamza Chimaev, Leon Edwards. Hamza Chimaev coming in being the potentially fighter of the year of 2020 if he gets a win over Leon Edwards. But the fact that he's had 3 fights in very quick succession, going for a 4th, and he's already fighting a ranked opponent who's number 3 in Leon Edwards is, it might be genius or it might be very stupid for him if he gets battered by Leon Edwards. It can't go 5 rounds for Leon Edwards. If Leon Edwards stretches out for 5 rounds, that makes him look a little bit bad. But you're expecting if Leon Edwards gets it done in 2 or 3 rounds, very convincingly, very brutally, you could say. I think he's been promised a title opportunity. Then it also means we can take stock on where Hamza Chimaev is, of course. But if Chimaev wins, he's stolen all the limelight that Leon Edwards was worth, or takes that 8-fight win streak that he's got at the moment, and probably goes into next year looking for a Jorge Masvidal, Colby Compton, with Gilbert Burns more likely to take on Kamaru Usman, and then you can, put Hamza Chimaev after that for a title shot. Should he beat some of those elite opponents? But it's fantastic that it is interesting. Hamza Chimaev is an anomaly. The fact that he's doing it across 2 weight classes, almost week in, week out. The fact that there's already asks for him to be given a title shot. The fact that he's got a top 3 before he's even made anywhere near the rankings yet. But Leon Edwards does have a lot of work to do, and this is what he said here on Hamza Chimaev. I believe he's overhyped. It's hard to judge him. The competition he's faced is pretty low, so I don't know. It's hard to judge him. I've been 9-0 in my career. I once had an 8-second knockout in the UFC. I've done everything he's done. You know what I mean? It's hard to judge him. The UFC is just trying to hype him. Now, there's probably a bit of hype to that and a bit of truth to that the UFC have put all their eggs in the Hamza Chimaev hype train at the moment. But he's delivering. When you knock out Jared Mearshart with 1 punch, after the Reece McKee win and the John Phillips win, I think he's 192 or something to 2 in terms of strikes landed versus strikes faced. It's ridiculous what he's done in this very short amount of time. And he is very marketable. Obviously, Sweden, with Alexander Gustafsson, it's a huge market up there. But he knows how to talk as well. He's almost a bit of a blend of Conor and Khabib. He's Khabib in the cage and Conor out the cage. But yes, he's looking to steal his limelight there. And, come, I think December 19th I think it's the final card of the year. That's going to be a cracking bout. Now we move on to the final one, which is Kevin Holland. Someone else who's obviously stepping on not quite as short notice as Paul Felder, a couple of weeks away yet, but he's going to be facing Jack Hermansson. Not Darren Till, who pulled out because of the re-aggravated knee injury that he suffered last week. He had to pull and save himself the next year, which is probably the best decision to do for him. But Kevin Holland stepping in 4-0 this year, potentially moving up to 5-0 with a win on December 5th. It's going to be, I think this is, again, 2020 is the year where activity has been rewarded this year. And we see that with Kevin Holland. He's 4-0 this year with 3 wins in consecutive months in August, September, and October. He's not going to be fighting in November, which I'm sure is a shame for him. But the fact that he's getting a main event slot against someone like Jack Hermansson, who's 6th in the middleweight rankings, a win again for Kevin Holland would put him into title contention going into next year. Even if he loses and he puts on a good performance, it's a bit of a win-win for him. He'd probably put himself in the rankings at least within the top 10, maybe top 11. But so yeah, it's really a win-win for Kevin Holland. He deserves it. But he took a little shot at Jorge Masvidal today. And speaking to Ariel Helwani, he was saying he walks around at 196. He has leverage. I'm tall, I'm long, so I can fight at middleweight, no problem. But if they had a 175-pound division, I'd be there. But they have 2 belts at 170, and I think 1 belt doesn't belong at welterweight. You know what I mean? I think you know what I mean. He said to Ariel Helwani, so maybe I can go out and slap somebody after the fight, in reference to Jorge Masvidal and Leon Edwards. You know what happened at UFC London back 2018 now. It's been a little while since it happened. The 3-piece and the soda incident, and I'm really and let everyone know that I'm really a BMF and that I can get a BMF fight. So throwing the feelers out there to Jorge Masvidal. Of course, he doesn't have a fight lined up. It's more likely going to be Colby Covington. We don't want to get political here, but Jorge Masvidal has completely ruined all of the hype and anticipation he'd earned himself through 2019 with his political stance and his social media work. Has made him someone who people dislike now within the community. However, inside the cage, we know what he brings. He stepped in against Kamaru Usman on very short notice, and again, 4 or 5 days notice, even a week at maximum's notice. But he had a very good 2019, whether he faces Colby Covington, whether he faces Gilbert Burns, or even Leon Edwards, should Leon Edwards get that win, or even Chimaev if Chimaev wins. But Holland, Masvidal, you can see where Holland's looking for 2021. He's putting the activity this year, and he wants to be rewarded for it next year. But yes, I think that's a good place to leave it, guys. I think that's been a cracking one for the first one of what's the chat going on, what's the chat, what's the story. I think it's going to be a tagline for this one, a Captain Conan shout out there. But yes, make sure to hit that subscribe button, make sure to hit follow on the Facebook channel, of course, and we'll see you guys on the next one.